unit cost actually the same. I gotta write my thing for 6. Does anybody have a garage?
Yeah, here.
Judy sells very well. Thank you. Thank you so much. Of course, go right ahead. Of course, go right ahead.
There he is. It's pretty good. Pretty good. You want to talk with just a second? Sure, just hold on. On the ground floor. Let's go. Let's go. I got some calls.
Sit down before we get started.
Yeah. I like that Italian you got on this hill. California. California? That's one of the best things in Montana. Where do y'all live?
I bet she's going to Lee's
You're behind like Ensminger.
The room has reached capacity and we can't get any more people in safely. And so what we're going to do is for anybody that can't make it in or is unable to get in tonight, we're going to reschedule another meeting or schedule another meeting next week. We don't have the dates and times yet, but we'll get something and communicate it to everybody in the community. So that's good. Then thank you for everybody for showing up. This is a great showing, and we've got a lot of great information for you tonight. Introduce the speakers here tonight. First, we're going to hear from Dot Rice, and Dot's going to share with us an open letter she's written to President Obama. And I understand, Becky, are you going to join her? And,
yes, sir.
all right, Becky's going to join her. And Becky, you're writing a letter also?
Yes.
Good. Then we're going to have Dr. Jeff Wilcox, our technical advisor for the community. He is going to come up and give us a science lesson on the real facts so that we can separate fact from fiction, so that we know what's really going on with this contamination and how we can separate what the EPA is telling us from what's really happening. And then we're going to hear from Jerry Ensminger, and he's going to go over some recent legislation from the EPA and how it's affected our site and also Camp Lejeune. Is that correct? Okay. No, it's not. Well, it's federal legislation, right? And then we'll have Barry and Tate come up and discuss some other things and have a Q&A session afterwards. Okay?
Check.
I would just like to thank everyone for being here tonight. This is a great turnout, and this is what we've been needing, all of the support from the people in our community and the surrounding community. Becky and I started this. Becky and I started this in 1999. We found this contamination in our yard, and our lives have not been the same since that. We have been affected. It's just hard to explain to people that have not been through it, just have difficulty. It has been. We've been fighting this for 15 years, and the bad thing was that EPA and CTS and all the others knew it a long time before us, so they've known this for 25 years. I feel that if they had acted on the AOC, the administration order on consent back in 2001 and started cleaning up, we wouldn't be in this situation today. Tonight, I mailed my letter to President Obama. I'm hoping he gets it and will read it and will act on it. I'm not going to read all of it, but there's copies of it up here for you. I have some demands that I am sending to him. I hope we get some response from them. I've been talking to a couple of congressmen this week, and they're assuring us they're going to help us too. So that's what our hopes are, that they will. The vapors have come so bad in the past. Well, we knew they were bad in 2008, but EPA refused to move our bus stop that we've had them to move. And they refused to come into my son Terry's house to test inside. They wanted to do the crawl space and around the house. I kept holding out and saying, we want the living space tested. And that is the reason EPA has said that our family held up the testing. We didn't hold it up, we just wanted the proper testing done. And so since we do have it now, and the test results are so bad, they have relocated my son and also 12 other people, including 7 children, to motels and to a house. We are waiting other test results, and there's going to be more relocations. And I have another son that has a family of 2 small children that we feel sure will probably have to be relocated, as well as myself. And I have a grandson that lives with me now and a disabled husband. So we're anxious waiting the results of this, and we're asking them to please retest all the people in the surrounding area that have had positive testing. Most everybody knows about my family. We were a military family. My husband was wounded twice in Vietnam. He's now disabled. And I worked in the medical and dental field. So we're not freeloaders. We pay taxes all these years, and all we're asking now is that the government help us and not let us down. We're not asking for special treatment, just what we deserve and what we think is right. There's been over $11 million has been spent, but has anyone seen anything that looked like a cleanup? I haven't in my backyard. But we are tired, and we're just ready for something to be done. And that was the reason that I had written the letter to the president. I have 11 issues that I feel that we need to ask him to act on for my family as well as our community. Number 1 is an updated national contingency plan emergency response to immediately begin source removal under the removal branch of the United States EPA. This to be enforced and managed by a new team of EPA officials. We have no faith left in the ones that we have, and we would like them not to have any prior connections to the CTS plant. We would like to have renewed air sampling for the surrounding areas under the emergency response team, starting with the previously tested positive for contamination. We'd like installation of air monitoring stations for the immediate area, installation of water lines an additional 2 miles out to encompass a 3-mile radius. Redesignates the size of CTS of Asheville Incorporation Superfund site to its original and legal binding 53.54 acre size. That was what it was when I bought my property in 1970. Immediate and independent health screening for my entire family. I would like compensation for my property at a fair market price, not to be influenced by the reduction of contamination or by me living close to the CTS site. I would like an FBI investigation into the possible criminal activity by EPA officials, particularly under the circular law in 103. I would like for everyone to be able to read this and you would understand just how wrongly we have been treated and the laws have been broken under that one law. I would also like everyone to discuss this disaster with Mr. Barry Duran and Mr. Tate McQueen. No one knows more about this site than these two guys. They have worked endless times away from their family through thousands of pages of EPA documents, even the ones they tried to hide from us, they found them. And they have been through all of this, and the countless hours is just unbelievable. They need to also talk to Dr. Jeff Wilcox. He's a science expert and our technical advisor on the CTS plan. He spent 6 years working with us. He's been to my house many a time helping me with the split sampling because I didn't have the faith in the EPA sampling. He's teaching a bunch of kids now that I feel sure someday will make a good employee for EPA. I would please like for us all to work together and get our community back safe for us all to live in and not be afraid to go out to breathe or to drink the water around us. I would like to thank some people that are real heroes in our community for standing by all of us for all these years and for trying to get this deadly situation resolved. Barry Duran, Tate McQueen, Aaron Penley, Scott Howell, he couldn't be here tonight, Dr. Wilcox, is he here? He told me he was going out of town. Okay. Dave Ogren, Glenn and Gina Horecki, Lori and Dan Murphy, Laura Carson, Katie Damon, and so many others, like Marine Sergeant Major Ensminger, and Jerry Rice, our cameraman. He's always there making pictures. He's not kidding me, but we still love each other. But let's all get together and work together and make this the night that it is a new beginning for all of us. Now I'd like to let Becky. She has been through a lot too, and we cry on each other's shoulders all the time because nobody else understands exactly what we've been through.
Hello, my name is Becky Robinson. My family has been through a lot. We have a lot of sickness in our family. I feel like the EPA has fallen down on their job. They haven't been back to test our vapors under our house, and I really wish they would do that. We're pretty much in the same shape that Dawn and her family are in. It's our home place. This is where we've lived all our life. And I just want to see it cleaned up. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Jeff Wilcox, Dr. Jeff Wilcox. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to stand out here. Can everybody hear me if I hold it right here? Good? Okay. So some of you don't know me, some of you do know me. I teach at UNCA. I teach geology and environmental chemistry, and I've been involved at the site for 6 years. And I'm used to teaching. I'm teaching to a room full of students, but usually not as attentive as this. And I'm usually not holding a microphone. But I put the title of my talk as What You Need to Know. Oops, this is an on button. That is the button. What you need to know. Some of you are not going to be able to see that, and I can email it around. I also put cliff notes on the chairs, so if you fall asleep and you can just wake up at number 13 or 14, you'll be fine. My job teaching, every class I teach, there are textbooks available. There are probably online seminars. The reason why I believe I'm valuable to my students is that I sift through those. I go to conferences, I read technical journals, I read the textbooks, and I sift out what's important and what I feel they need to know, and then I try to teach it in such a way that they will remember it. And so that's what I'm going to try to do tonight. You can let me know afterwards if it worked, and if not, you can keep your thoughts to yourself. Okay, first of all, there are some things I love in life. I love my wife, my kids, and I love groundwater. Okay? And a lot of people don't understand what groundwater is. A lot of people here do. But just in case there are some new faces, this is an AP report that talks about an underground river in Brazil. The New York Times talks about rivers and pools known as aquifers, to which a hydrogeologist like me goes, how many of you have ever been to Mammoth Cave or Linville Caverns and seen an underground river? Keep your hands up if you paid to see it. I tell my students underground rivers and lakes do exist, but they're so rare that when they exist, you pay an admission fee to see it. Most groundwater occurs in the pores between sediments. This would be hard with a microphone. Hold on. So what I've got here is a beaker filled with sediments. I'm going to pour water in. I do a demo in my classes with beer. They really love it. And what you can see is that the water is going down into the sediments, and it's in the pore spaces between the sediments. I'll leave this here in front of you. All right, this is clean water. So groundwater occurs in the pore spaces between sediments. It also occurs in cracks in rocks. So if you, in your mind, have always thought about underground lakes and rivers, please try to erase that from your mind. If we had that here around the CTS site, you'd all be charging $8 a head to come and see it, and it'd be wonderful for everybody involved. Okay, so if we talk about groundwater, if we go down below the land surface, we reach what's called the unsaturated zone, where the pores between the sediments or the cracks in the rocks are filled with both air and water. If you keep digging, you get to the water table. Below the water table, the pore spaces are filled with 100% water. You all probably have experience with that if you've ever been to a lake or a stream or to the ocean where the water table is right near the surface. Have you ever dug a hole on the beach? And it fills with water, and no matter how many buckets you get rid of the water with, it keeps coming back in. That's because you've hit the water table. I tell my students to tell their friends and family about that when they go to the beach this summer. So when it rains, some of the water evaporates into the air, some runs off straight into streams and rivers, and some infiltrates into the groundwater, where it very slowly, in most cases, flows. Now you're not all going to be able to see this either, but there's someone here with a camera, maybe they'll take a picture. This is my colleagues call it an ant farm. I don't like that term. But what I have here is a little model filled with sand, and I've been adding water since I got here to the sides, and this is the recharge zone. The CTS plant is on the top of a recharge zone. What happens when groundwater, when the water reaches the water table, is it flows toward usually the lowest point. Water tends to do that. In this case, it's flowing towards this stream. And if I open the stream, I've had it plugged, now the stream is flowing out towards you. and it's going to drain out. And as it drains, if I keep adding water to the recharge zone, it's going to keep traveling through these pores to the stream and out towards you. And now this is where the ooh-ah moment comes. See? Ooh-ah. This simulates an underground storage tank. More specifically, it simulates a leaky underground storage tank. And if I keep adding water here the whole time during my presentation, and water, you can see I drained the stream. I'm going to close the stream so it'll refill. During my presentation though, if I keep adding water over here, you'll see the plume of green contaminant move toward the stream. And if I do this consistently and long enough, I may forget because I have other things to talk about, but if I do this consistently and long enough, you'll see green start to appear in the stream. Sound like anybody, sounds like anybody's property who's in this room. Okay. Now where did I put my clicker? There it is. Okay, this is just a simplified picture of what our geology looks like around here. We have saprolite, which is soil, weathered bedrock, on top of fractured bedrock. Some places the saprolite is missing completely and there's bedrock right at the surface. The thickness of the saprolite could be 10 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet. Below the CTS site, I think it's about 30 feet, somewhere around there. Most of you, if you have private wells, the private wells probably go down into the fractured bedrock, and you cross your fingers and hope that they intersect a bedrock fracture with enough flow, called yield, to your well. And if not, once you get deep enough, the fractures are fewer and further between, they have to pull up, move over, and sometimes you just cross your fingers and hope they hit it with the second one. So that's the general background of geology in the area. Any questions? Just kidding, hold them for now, there's too many of you. The next thing I wanted to go over, because it's been in the news a lot lately, is the term NAPL. NAPL, rhymes with apple, stands for non-aqueous phase liquid. These are liquids that do not mix with water readily. And Barry put together a little demo for me. It has some mineral oil and PCE. And what you can see is even as I shake it up, we have some floating to the top and some going toward the bottom. But it is not going to stay in the middle. So there are two terms specifically, L-NAPL and D-NAPL. An L-NAPL is a light NAPL. It is less dense than water, so it does not sink through water, it kind of floats on water. So you have to take into account, try to imagine this demo of water, except that it's in this, okay? And now you've got the situation we have around the CTS site. So L-NAPLs tend to, here's the land surface, oops, put those right next to each other. Here's the land surface, here's the fuel leak, or it could be dumping things on the floor of the factory, and L-NAPLs will tend to float on the water table. Now it's not really floating like that, it's in the pore spaces. Meanwhile, as fresh water flows down here, it will dissolve a little bit at a time. In other words, I'm not going to drink the water in the middle here. There's a little bit of PCE in there. It might be hundreds or thousands of parts per billion, which are huge numbers from a health perspective, but very low. I mean, it's mostly water, 99.99% water, but that 0.001% PCE is not good for you.
You said PCE or TCE?
This was PCE,
Okay.
which is like TCE, it's just got 4 chlorines instead of 3.
Okay.
So TCE, though, is a D-NAPL. TCE is denser than water. And what that means is that TCE is driven by gravity. And when you have a D-NAPL, it basically sinks through the water column. It sinks until it reaches, maybe there's a clay lens that it'll kind of pool up on. If it reaches bedrock or a clay layer, it might kind of pool up on top of that. If it reaches a fractured bedrock system, guess where it's heading? Into the fractures. Meanwhile, it's also pooled up here, 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 here. It's all over the place. Any fresh groundwater that's flowing from left to right is going to dissolve some of it and take it to, say, some springs nearby. So that's Napple. The thing is, this is like, I like to describe this as a buried drum of TCE, except there's no drum around it. And these can be huge concentrations from a health perspective, but they're only a very, very tiny fraction of what's sitting there, which means that groundwater can flow this way for years, decades, even centuries, and still maintain constant concentrations down here. I'm going to make the case a little later that in order to clean up any of this, we got to get rid of these. We've got to get rid of those. We can't just treat out here. Okay, so this is another diagram, and there's no drum in CTS. But other than that, this is what it looks like at CTS. You have some contaminant in the unsaturated zone above the water table. This is the water table right here. Here's some L-Napple pooled up on the surface. And here's where some D-Napple has fallen through the aquifer and gotten into the fractured bedrock. So we've got a little bit of Napple up here in the soil, a little bit of Napple up here at the water table, a little bit of Napple down here at the bedrock, a little bit of Napple down in the fractures. You say, how do I know that? I read MacTech's reports. Thousands of pages of reports. I believe there's 3 of us in this room who have read thousands of pages of reports. This is one of them, and this is going to be hard to see if you're in the back maybe. This is the land surface, this is the building outline. The land surface slopes down to where the Rice's springs are down here. It does not take a PhD in hydrogeology to figure out where the recharge area is and where the stream is. If you've been to the Rice's property, you walk down Terry's driveway, and it's very obvious where the water from those springs is coming from. Well, they did some borings here. They went down and they looked at soil, and they collected soil samples. This is kind of the equivalent of parts per billion, but it's a soil number, so it's a little bit different. But 280,000 above the water table. That's a very large number. Maybe Camp Lejeune has some similar numbers, but 400,000 just below the water table. Up to 830,000 sitting on the bedrock. So we have a soil source, we have a L-Napple source, we have D-Napple. We've got it all. What's interesting to note is this is a 2004 report. Ooh. Okay, so following that, CTS, MacTech proposed treatment of the soil, but you'll notice they only actually address the unsaturated soil. Why, given that we have contamination in the unsaturated soil at the water table and at the bedrock, why would you only want to treat the shallow? I don't know, I don't work for MacTech. So they said, well, we can excavate the source area by $4.9 to $5.5 million, or we can do soil vapor extraction for $340,000 to $380,000, plus, total cost $500,000. Guess which one they chose? Soil vapor extraction, and EPA accepted that as a reasonable treatment option. Soil vapor extraction is used widely across the country. It works fairly well for soil above the water table. So what they did is they went out here and they put in the equivalent of vacuum cleaners into the shallow soil to suck out TCE vapors. And by doing that, any other TCE that's stuck to the soil will go into the vapor phase, and then they can suck that out. But you'll notice that it doesn't come anywhere near to these numbers down here. So this was a design flaw from the start. It was not designed to treat anything below the water table where the highest numbers are.
How deep is it to the water table?
Well, let's see, 20, like 20 feet or something like that. Although I think it's 12 was in their recent report from last week. They say it's gone up by 10 feet, 15 feet from the last time they gave reports.
Jeff?
Yeah.
For those of us who,
I know what's going on, but there are a lot of people that are kind of getting this information for the first time.
Am I going too fast?
No, could you just remind everybody what the EPA levels, or acceptable levels for TCE are versus that?
They do not have acceptable levels for soil on the site, because the only exposed, they do actually if it was like on your property and you had kids potentially playing it, but that's fenced off. So there's different levels given who might be exposed to it. By the way, the other issue they needed to treat in the early 2000s was that they ran some health numbers for the springs on Terry's property and said, boy, if a kid played in those springs, this would be disastrous. And they solved the problem adequately from EPA's perspective by putting a chain link fence around it. That was their treatment, and they have that was one of their treatment things, is a fence.
Dr. Wilcox.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
So 20 years ago, they did the same testing, they would have found the 800,000 UG way above that rock.
It would have been a little lower here and probably a little higher up here. Yeah.
So whatever was on the more closer to the surface is now down below.
Yes.
So,
I'm going to show you that in just a second.
right. So,
I love it when people preempt my next slide. No, I'm saying that seriously. It shows me I put things in a good order. So you want to see what they released to us last week.